Join me today as we chat to Henning Klopper, the visionary founder of Zuney Wagyu Burgers, right here in the vibrant Kloof Street in Cape Town. We're diving into his entrepreneurial journey, from where it all started, the growth that they've seen, the accolades they've accumulated, right through to what the future has in store for this amazing brand. Henning, it's great to have you on the podcast, and it's really special that we get to record this episode on location at the Zuney Wagyu in Kloof Street. What do I need to know about you to get a better perspective on how Zuney came to be?
Rudolph and Wealth Lab team, thank you so much for everything, and thanks for being here, and thanks for your time. What do you need to know about Henning? Yes, I'm quite a simple person. I really just try and keep everything as simple as possible. I don't really have restaurant experience. Neither Devin, my business partner, nor I has any restaurant experience. So we're kind of very new to this, and we're trying to take a little bit of a different spin to this. Now, Zuney essentially started in 2014 when my dad and Devin's dad, my dad is Henk, Devin's dad is Dennis, they're neighbors and best friends. And they started farming Wagyu in 2014. And for about 6-7 years, we kept on seeing that they're taking these beautiful animals and we're getting these amazing steaks, but they're just struggling to get off the farm. And during that initial hard lockdown of COVID, where I was still full-time at Freedom of Movement, Devin was a teacher at Somerset College, and we both just had a deep conversation. We both said, we see a future in Wagyu. We want to try help our dads get these cattle off the farm, but how, when, where is that going to happen? So, yeah. That's when we put a business plan together, and we started in 2021 Zuney Wagyu, which delivers our Wagyu steaks anywhere in South Africa. And that was kind of our first business, and that business is running, and it's doing very well. Zuney Burgers, which I'm sure we'll touch on just now, is where we're sitting in now, which is kind of a secondary business to support the first business due to the excess in trim. Amazing.
What would we not read about you on your social media about pages that would give us a glimpse into your life?
Yes, I would say for me, it's all about the vibe. It's a bit of I've always just liked that slogan, that old News Cafe slogan. It's just, especially when you eat, I think there's so many things that people pick up on, all those small, if the fridge is organized or not, that adds up to it. And that all adds to your vibe in your head. And essentially, you eat with your feelings before you actually eat with your taste, if I can put it like that.
It's a wonderful way to look at it. Did you grow up in an environment that allowed you to shift into a more entrepreneurial way of being?
No, it's actually not. Exactly the opposite. I think, and that actually maybe pushed me towards that. So my dad was a stockbroker for Nedbank, head of institutional equities there. All his years, and he bought the farm to kind of retire on it. I think if you ask him now, he'll say he's working harder than he did back in the day. But I was actually always positioned or kind of groomed, if I can put it like that, to become a stockbroker. I studied accounting, got to have a degree in investment management, but it was just at the end of varsity when Freedom of Movement started, and I kind of became their first employee as sales manager and built my way up in the company. And that's actually where I found my passion for entrepreneurship and building businesses. It was really, I always call it the University of Freedom of Movement, because I learned so much there that I really try and apply into every day here at Zuney.
Wonderful. What was that sort of aha moment that led you to start the business? Because you moved from being employed to now being self-employed and a business owner.
So it was just about, I think, putting a business plan together and seeing if it works. If you, at the end of the day, put it on black and white and you make your dad or whoever read it and they say, okay, cool, this can be a viable business, then that starts clicking. But the big, I would say, aha moment is it's still in process. And it's like, I think people also just need to sometimes believe that you can do everything. And a lot of people have ideas, but they don't put it into business plan, or they just talk about the idea. And I really believe that in South Africa, you've got the perfect landscape that if you believe that you can do something and you go all out, you do your proper research, then there's so much gap and opportunity for you to supply a product for everybody in South Africa. You just need to be awake in your industry, I guess.
I really like that. So there's obviously a backstory from the growing up in a home where it was maybe more finance and that transition to farming. So quite a jump. And then it was this family business that started with Wagyu cattle, and then it went into the meat business, then into the burger. So what was the story? How did you go from seeing your family's transition into your own transition with maybe the view of going into finance yourself, and then saying, okay, but maybe there's something else that I can do?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it was just Devin and I, as I mentioned earlier, seeing that and like tasting the steaks, and our dad just keep on complaining they're not finding a market to buy. And at that time, the Wagyu market was very interesting because it was a new product which the meat consumers didn't really know about. And we also felt that if we catch that wave, so basically if there's a wave or a resurgence of something new, then people talk about it. And if you can then associate yourselves in their minds that when they think of Wagyu, they think of Zuney, then it's quite an easy entry to market because there isn't that much competition.
Can you tell us about Wagyu specifically? What is it and what is it not?
Okay, so Wagyu is a Japanese breed of cattle that originates obviously from Japan. Wagyu means our cattle in Japanese. Wa is our and Gyu means cattle, okay? So there are 16 different breeds of Wagyu cattle in Japan, okay? Now, they've been raising those cattle since the early 1900s. And in about 1960s, the guy called Mr. Takeda was one of the first guys in Japan to export animals to Australia and America. Then I think it was about the late 80s, Japan realized that this guy is closing his border, is exporting all of their IP. So they actually closed their borders. So from the 1980s, you can't export live animals, embryos, or semen out of Japan. And so everything that we eat now is what was exported to Australia and America in the early years, in the 1960s, which is what we call worldwide Wagyu. Now, Wagyu is known for its intramuscular fat. So it's very high in monounsaturated fats. So it increases the HDLs and lowers the LDLs, which is good. But like everything, too much of a good thing is a bad thing, and it can be very rich. So people in South Africa often go, I want a 500-gram Wagyu steak, and we tell them, listen, we'll give it to you, but you're not going to be able to eat it on your own. It's more a plunky steak. Share it around friends and family. In Japan, if you eat 150 grams, that's a lot. Now, what was very interesting is Wagyu has an overdeveloped forequarter because they are pool animals in Japan. Okay, so we get bigger cuts from the forequarter. Now, normally in South Africa, before Wagyu, everything from the forequarter would go into trim. Okay, now with Wagyu, because it's got an overdeveloped forequarter, but also because we raise it for 3 years. So normal beef cattle in South Africa is 12 to 18 months mostly feed on. Wagyu is 3 years. We do on the grass where most other people do purely grain-fed. And so you get a bigger animal. So the carcass weight is about 500 kilograms when it comes into our meat room. Now, normal cattle is about 350. So trucks in South Africa that transport meat is actually not equipped to transport such big animals. So for the first time, we can actually harvest steaks from the forequarter, which gives us cuts like a flat iron, a Denver, rib steaks, and chuck eye, which people don't know about, but it's actually our favorite steaks. It's very tender, got a lot of flavor, and that's really what makes Wagyu special. Is besides the intramuscular fat, there's so many steaks that you can harvest and actually try. What's also very interesting and I love about it is that we often do tasting events with people, and we would do 7 to 10 cuts, and all cuts would be from the same animal. And just to see how different each steak cuts from the same animal is always very enticing and intriguing to people to see and to taste, actually. So it's almost a niche within the meat industry that's very new, and we just really see a lot of gap and potential for Wagyu's growth in South Africa.
I love the science behind it. It's not just let's just see what works. There's really thought and intention around it. So that's obviously on the meat side itself, but we're sitting in Zuney Burgers. Yes. So where did this idea come from, and was it an immediate thing that you thought this is going to be the thing, or was it a gradual shift to what we see here today?
So we're actually sitting in a problem solver, to be honest. So Zuney Wagyu is our first business, and which I said earlier is online. But if you look at the breakdown of a Wagyu animal, okay, as I mentioned earlier, it's 500 kilogram carcass weight. Now, people don't realize out of that 500 kilograms, and this is now taking forequarter steaks like the flat iron Denver into account, you only get a maximum of 70 kilograms. That's 14% of steaks out of a 500 kilogram animal. But trim, which is what we call mince, is trim, is all of the other pieces of the of meat. And essentially that's 220 kilograms, with fat being 80 kilograms of that on top of that. So it's about 320 kilograms of a 500 kilogram animal that you need to do something with. And we kept on supplying in a wholesale model to a lot of restaurants, and we still do, but we just really realized that we need to control the environment that we sell this, because we've got so much of it. If we actually want to build a proper business here, we're going to have to do something with it. And in our original business plan, David and I said, look, there's three options. We're not always going to be an online business. It's to an extent, it's a bit capped in South Africa. But we'll either start a burger shop, a restaurant, or a butchery. Now, the restaurant was, if you open up a restaurant now, we're talking about minimum 5 million rand capital expenditure. A butchery, I would say, is 2 to 3 million rand minimum capital expenditure. And I also stress sometimes that people don't necessarily want to see full carcasses and things like that. I feel like consumers, unfortunately, want to just have a steak on their plate and not really know where it's coming from. But the burger shop, it was quite an easy way for us to build a brand around the business. It is a trending food, and essentially it solves problems. Because if you look worldwide in fast food categories, burgers is currently sitting at number 1. I don't believe that it'll ever fall out of the top 3, top 5. So it's always going to be something that consumers like to eat, and often. So that's essentially when you just said, look, we have potential here. We've got excess of a product. Let's make use of the trim. The fat, let's look at how we can use that. We looked at a thing called Formula 47, which is how McDonald's used to make their fries, which uses 92% beef tallow and 7.5% oil to essentially cook their fries in. And then in the late 90s, there was a movement that goes against animal fat and more to seed oils. Interestingly enough, the last 3 years, that movement has now reversed to move back to animal fats. So essentially, the fat and the trim was just to solve the problem, because we were buying freezers and excess all the time to store all the stuff in, and we obviously don't want to keep things frozen. So we just said, cool, let's try and create this brand, and it's taken off extremely well, and we cannot be more than happy enough.
I want to take you back to your first location, your first customer, your first sale. Can you take us through that moment?
Yes, it was amazing. I must say, to get this location was a bit of a long wind around. We met up with the landlord. He had another location for us, and essentially we kept on gunning for it, and he just said, listen, he needs to give it to yours truly, but there is potential of this site coming up. Although it was too big for us, we decided to split it up. And make 2 shops out of it to kind of allow him to have one anchor tenant and one more experimental tenant, which was us. I mean, you don't often get a landlord to say, okay, cool, I'm happy to accept you on a business plan. Mostly they like to go with business with proper track records. And so we actually just were very lucky, worked hard, and gave the guy a lot of Wagyu boxes to to get the lease. But our first client was 28 September 2023, Georg Rotenbach. I'll never forget. I've got a video of him walking in here, being our first client. I think he still eats Zuney once a week. So he's a year and a half of eating Zuney every week. But it was the most just amazing feeling. But it was also nervous, because like everything in business, I feel that for business to run, you need product market fit. Now, I knew we had the product. I knew that with Wagyu coming, there's going to be a market. But the fit was a big thing in Cape Town. How are people going to respond to a farm-to-table, meat-orientated business where a couple of years ago there was a big veganism movement? Slowly but surely that was moving away from the veganism movement. So it was just how it was actually going to click. And at the start, like everything, it was slow and it took time. I think ours took a bit quicker than most would. And that was purely just because of us pushing and trying to create actually a brand around this. But we had a perfect platform to do it. And Kloof Street is really, I almost see it as an incubator for businesses. Vida started just down the road here. Hudson's also started in Kloof Street. And a lot of businesses actually started off Kloof Street to then go and expand across the country.
So 2023 was your first sale here.
Yes.
But that wasn't the first time you sold a burger.
Definitely not. No. So in about 2022, we were very lucky enough. We got into the Sevens Rugby World Cup, which was held in September of 2022, if I'm not mistaken. And the guy that helped us get in there, he just kept on saying, he was the CEO of the business, and he just kept on saying, no, it's fine. We can kind of use a gazebo and sell out of there. And I remember it was about 2-3 weeks before the actual event, and the COO guy calls us and he says, listen, he just wants to make sure, do we have a food trailer or not? Because if the answer is no, you're not coming. And I said, yes, we definitely have a food trailer, and we definitely did not have a food trailer. So I quickly, after that call, made some calls to other people, and luckily the first guy that I called actually had a newly built trailer for burgers, and it was a blank shell. So we had magnets made and put that up. What was interesting though, and which was really for us about learning lessons, is we thought we would sell about 3,000 burgers and held that stock there, and we only sold, I think, 700 burgers. So it was also just to learn how to work those things. So, for example, at that time, we used to put lettuce on our burger. Now, if you want that crunchy effect from lettuce that most people do want, you're going to need a crunchita lettuce. Now, it's very difficult to source crunchita lettuce in scale, where you only get iceberg lettuce like what you normally get. So we had to literally hire freezers to store lettuce in, and at the end of the day, we had 2,300 burgers worth of lettuce that we literally were driving around the street handing out after the event. And it was just things like that we learned, and it helped us to grow and kind of do a market phase, if I can put it like that, a market phase where test the product and get direct feedback. And I mean, that took 2 years of testing, trying, having a trailer. After that event, we actually just bought our first trailer. I still had a Volkswagen Golf, drove with that Volkswagen Golf all the way to Joburg, 80 kilometers an hour. It took me 2 days, did an event, sold out, turned around, and then did the HSBC 7s after we did that World Cup. So, yeah, it was all, at that time, I think I was living life with a little bit like a gypsy, to be honest. Lamar, he's probably the most important guy in our business. He's our current GM. He's been with us basically from day one in this trailer industry, and him and I would just travel around the country, Crawford, or Kempton, all these odd towns, and just go to festivals and sell burgers, and then pack up and then go to the next one. And yeah, it was interesting because I didn't really have much of a life then, and but it was those hard yards that really helped me today to kind of set this business up.
Yes, what a wonderful progression from knowing that we've got this problem to solve.
Yes.
We have excess meat from the farm. We can't let it go to waste. Yes, we are able to sell it, but what if we can solve that challenge ourselves? And it turned into this. So in the early days of Zuney, what were some of your biggest challenges that you faced, and how did you overcome them?
Yes, the biggest challenges I would say is probably cash flow. That's always in any restaurant or business is very important. But for Zuney Burgers, and somebody asked me this the other day, and I've been thinking about it because I feel the last time I didn't answer it as properly as I should have. But I would say the biggest challenge is knowing your worth. It's a bit of an odd one, but knowing what product you have and the value that you sell is really important, because often people try and just sell something for as cheap as possible to get it into somebody's hands, but psychologically that's not always the best solution. So if you have to have a pricing strategy in alignment with your brand. So we do sell Wagyu. It is an elevated beef product. So most other Wagyu suppliers actually called us to say, like, you're selling your burger for too cheap. And at the time I was like, oh, you're just now getting angry because I'm selling it but now I'm starting to understand, like, maybe I should have increased my price slightly a bit, and we have adjusted our prices more accordingly to the worth of the product, if I can put it like that, which is still in line with most other smash burgers around in Cape Town. So yeah, it's basically just knowing your worth. And yeah, another big challenge is because we've got 4 entities. So it's my dad's farming operation, Devin's dad's farming operation, then Zuney Wagyu, which buys the carcasses, processes it for online, and then the Zuney Burgers. It's to balance all 4 businesses, keep everybody happy. We've set it up in such a way that we've all got our direct avenue and channels. I'm in charge of Zuney Burgers, Devin is in charge of Zuney Wagyu, and I have final say, he has final say. I've got full faith in him. Every week we have a call, catch up, what's going on in my business, what's going on in your business. But essentially, if you have 4 businesses, to get cash flow into all 4 equally so that all 4 are profitable and making money is a challenge. But I feel we are getting it right, slowly but surely.
So you mentioned the cash flow as a challenge when you launched. Why did you say that?
So open cards, we lent about R1 million to open up the shop. Total spend was about 1.3, 1.4 million rand. But for example, when we opened, the week before we opened, I had 30,000 rand left of that R1 million. Okay. So I didn't even have a flat top then. So David and I, we just put our heads together and we said, okay, cool, what is the list of priorities that we need here? So obviously we need a flat top to cook it on. So we bought that, an old second-hand one, which actually was probably the best thing because flat tops these days are made different. So the older ones you can put as high as possible, and they've got a proper thick cast iron, where the new ones are a bit thinner and they've got a lot of regulators, if I can put it like that. So yeah, it was basically just to finalize and put all that money together. But for example, we didn't have a speaker. I used my own personal speaker. We didn't have cameras. We actually just kind of opened. I remember Devin and Chelsea is Devin's fiance, the day before we were opening, they walked in here and their eyes were like wide open because the floor was very like raw and natural, but also like we could have made it very cool, but we just didn't have money. And now it's nice because it adds to the element. And things like this wall, I mean, we literally just chipped away from it, away from the plaster, and this beautiful brick face added to it. And it kind of adds to the environment and adds to our message and adds to our whole vibe that we're trying to get. Yeah.
So thinking about the launch week and the first couple of weeks and having to figure out how to not just make sure that the product is as good as it can be, to not just attract the customers, but to keep them,
yes.
But also figuring out front of house, figuring out your point of sale system.
Exactly.
What are some of the biggest surprises in the first couple of weeks?
So I must say I've never worked in a restaurant. I've never been a waiter. I've been a barman at a couple of places and events and things like that, but I've literally never, and I always say, Devin and I always say, we've been in two kitchens, the one at home and the one that we opened. Like, we really are very new to this industry. So yeah, there was really a lot of surprises. For me, it was just mostly about getting into understanding how people want to be served. We actually try to take a bit of a different model in quick service. It's counter service. You order at the counter and we'll bring it to you. So we don't have heavy waiters and things like that. So the big challenge was just to kind of figure everything out. And I mean, with a low build cost, we had massive leaks for the first year. I would sometimes literally just sit here with buckets between the people. And that was part of that starting phase, is that we didn't have 3 million rand to open a shop. And to be honest, I don't want to open up a shop for 3 million rand because it's just too much. It's going to take so long to get the return on your investment. So open up small and then kind of let it grow and build from there. So it was for us just about understanding the consumers. But yeah, things like point of sale was actually fairly easy. I did a lot of that in my previous job. And today's systems, if you just integrate everything, so Yoko is integrated into our point of sale. So it's quick and easy at the end of the day. Somebody wants a cheeseburger, you type in cheeseburger, click it, and then 110 Rand comes up there for the consumer. There's no real margin for error, if I can put it like that. So, yeah.
So there were some practical surprises along the way.
Definitely.
Buckets between customers, which is interesting to navigate.
Very, yes.
Were there any financial surprises in the early days around like budgeting? If you open up a store for the first time, how many customers are going to walk through the door? I mean, you made the mistake when you had the food truck around prepping for 3,000 burgers and
yes.
with lettuce that you wanted to give away. How did you try and account for that in this space?
Yes, to be honest, that was a guessing game for me also. It's like, how do you actually know and project sales? Because everything looks good in an Excel spreadsheet, but we had our minimum break-even burgers. At the time, we thought that was 4,000. It's slightly more than that now, but it was getting an understanding of that, excuse me, and your operating costs. How much does it actually cost to operate the store? And then it also ties into knowing your worth, because we were selling at GP margins of about 50%, where it should be a bit higher than that in this industry. But I just wanted to infiltrate the market at a reasonably low price. So it was understanding those challenges, but without really knowing how it's going to work. And a big challenge for us at that time was that we didn't have a liquor license. So Jack Black and Brooks sponsored beers and seltzers. So every time somebody would buy a burger, we would give them a beer or a Brooks for free, because what we found is that consumers often like to have a beer or a Brooks or something with their food. So you kind of deterring them from coming without that. The moment we got our liquor license, I really feel this business went up a notch, because we actually allowed people to kind of stay here and enjoy it and actually pay for beer without actually getting it for free. beer and alcohol sales is a small percentage of our revenue, but it adds to the overall experience. We're not really in the class of, if you want wine, here's a can of wine. We want to add to your experience, give you a glass of wine, and in a nice glass, it's a good quality wine, although you just came for a burger.
And you mentioned that you sold 4,000 burgers when you started going, and you mentioned that there was initially starting the business without a liquor license. Yes. What was the journey of actually getting a liquor license? And once you got it, what did that do to the sales?
Yes, once we got that liquor license, it was definitely a process. About 6 months. We applied 3 months before opening to get that all in gear. Then we got it started running without it. And it was definitely challenging because it's difficult. It's interesting, we want quick service, so we want a quick turnover of tables, so people to eat and leave. And we were actually nervous that liquor is going to make people stay here and take up tables, because essentially all we want to do is sell burgers. And we then kept on going, giving those free beers and brooks. And when we got our liquor license, it allowed consumers to actually do the opposite of what we were nervous for. So they would just come and have one beer with a burger and enjoy it and then go. I think, unfortunately, in this day and age, a lot of people want to go out with friends and have a beer. So that then, the moment we got our liquor license, it allowed bigger tables to come and spend slightly more time here, although we don't want them to spend too much time here. So we do sell wine, everything by the glass or by the bottle. By the glass allows people to enjoy a good glass of wine and go on with their day or their evening. So I really think that once we got our liquor license, it just took us to the next level and allowed people to have a better and more full experience. And invite, if your friend doesn't drink, then he can still come. But if you don't have a liquor license, then basically nobody can drink, essentially. So yeah, that was really, it took us to the next level. We doubled sales, essentially, from when we had a liquor license, from that day. Although it was December then when we got it, but in general, we doubled sales from before liquor license.
Well, great timing for the liquor license to come in.
Exactly, yes. And it was interesting because I got it just before Christmas, and then we actually had to pay for 2023, and then a week later pay for 2024's liquor license also. So I think they timed that perfectly there.
They got their money's worth.
Yeah, exactly.
Reflecting on the journey from not just the food truck, but into the store opening, what was actually easier than you thought it would be, and what was a little bit more challenging?
Easier, I would say to get people actually through the door was easier than what I thought it would be, but location. We set ourselves up in Kloof Street where there is a lot of, I would say, the most foot traffic in City Bowl. And that really helped us to get people into the door. We are surrounded by a lot of nightlife places, and our model of being open till 1 a.m. during, let's call weekend trade, really does help us a lot because, for example, Blondie would close and then people would come here and have a last drink, eat a burger, and then go home. So that was a little bit easier than anticipated. The challenge, yes, I would say to get constant, amazing staff. We've got an amazing base here. We really call ourselves a Zuney family. We look after each other. I'm quite in touch with everybody's personal life, what's going on. I'd rather have them be open and share it with me than kind of hide it behind me. But to get the right fit of people, because Devin and I often take what we call a Rassie Erasmus approach. You can be the best griller in the world, but if you're not a nice person and you don't fit in, then you're not going to make the team. So we'd rather take somebody with slightly lower skills, but that works well in a team environment, because often in kitchens, things get heated. There's a lot of orders, just people sometimes kind of shout at each other or whatnot, and we always just say, give each other a hug after service, just to kind of make sure that everybody's happy on good terms and not to take things personally. So that staff is a challenge, but I really believe we've got the best possible team here. And from our leadership, like Jabulani, to see his growth, I've been working with Jabulani now we opened 28 September, since about, I would say, May of 2023, doing weekly sessions with him, and his growth, he's very young, and kind of see his growth as a leader has been really amazing for me to see, and just to kind of ensure that your team is happy. So I think often in this industry, people are very scared that your staff are going to be stolen. If they do well, then they're going to be poached. But I would rather have that and train them and give them and upskill them. And then if they go to another job where they get a higher salary, then at least I can say I've taught them something. I helped them have a better life. If it's not with the Zuney, at least it was with somebody else. And I'll always try and keep good relationships with as many staff as possible. Obviously, we have caught some stealing and things like that, which makes things tricky. And obviously, they were fired for that. But yeah, in general, it was just kind of that family cohesion and to just get that mix of people right to work together in a tight and small space.
Yes, I love hearing that about your staff and about the team, that your people is really important. And I think what came to mind is that you hire for attitude and you train for skill.
Yes.
Because that adds so much value to the client experience.
Exactly.
I want to deep dive about the business a little bit. Can you tell me about the current legal and ownership structure of Zuney and where that came from?
Yes. So Devin and I obviously kind of came up with a more direct consumer concept, but to keep things fair, so we've got Zuney Wagyu, which is the main company, or the holding company, and then Zuney Burgers, which is a subsidiary of Zuney Wagyu. Now, if you take Zuney Wagyu, I own personally 30%, Devin owns 30%, my dad owns 20%, and his dad owns 20%. So essentially, both families own 50%, but the two sons together own 60%. So we essentially are the final decision makers in that business, where our dads are the final decision makers in their farming operation, because they are there on the farm and they know what's going on, and they will raise cattle to the best of their ability, where Devin and I will kind of process the animals to the best of our ability. So we've got quite a fair shareholder split in it, where Zuney Burgers is now wholly owned by Zuney Wagyu. So it's quite an easy thing. Although we equal shareholders in each other's businesses, I would say I'm the managing director of Zuney Burgers and he's the managing director of Zuney Wagyu. And he gets final say. I trust his gut. We talk about things. It's nice to balance ideas with a business partner and kind of get his side of things. And so, yeah, we really chat a lot, work together. I've got full faith in him. I must say, to be honest, this business wouldn't be this business without Devin and his hard work. I think you can raise cattle to a large extent with reasonable things, but the big thing is processing those animals and deboning it, because it's very easy to drop quality there. And Devin is so... that place his meat room is like a surgery in there, and they really do a lot of unrecognized hard yards which people don't see, and that adds so much to the value of the product. I mean, to have our own meat processing facility, there's literally no restaurant, I think in South Africa almost, I can say that. So it gives us a unique selling point, which helps.
So when we think about Zuney Wagyu and Zuney Burgers, which is wholly owned by Zuney Wagyu, there's a direct investment of the people working within the businesses and working on the businesses. And then you have the two family farms that supply the meat. But your dad took an interesting turn, moving from finance to purchase a farm, or having had the farm to maybe transition his retirement into. But then it almost seems like he got a new lease on life to move into cattle. Was that an active decision, or was the farm already established? Was the cattle on the farm? Like, where did that idea come from to have this at the end of the day?
So my dad grew up on a beef farm in Lutrigard, so he's always been passionate about it. Dennis, Devin's dad, he's been on that farm for many years. He did work in Cape Town at a stage, but went back to the farm quite early and established his life there. So it was an interesting transition, especially for my dad to go from finance, but he actually bought the farm, and then he retired. And so he was, before Nedbank, he was at UBS, United Bank of Switzerland, and he left there, bought the farm, thought he was going to retire. Then Nedbank offered him a job, but only for about a year. I was at boarding school at St. Andrews. My sisters were at university. So it was kind of a question of, is my mom going to now go back to Joburg with my dad? Or what happened is, for about 10 years, my dad would live in Joburg, and then every single Friday, like clockwork, fly from Joburg, take the car train, fly to PE, drive to the farm 50 minutes away, spend the weekend there, Monday morning, first flight, go back to Joburg. And he did that for 10 years. So essentially, my mom, I think she might clap me for saying this, but she was a bit of a Santon mom. She was very fashionable, and she actually loved that. She was the main farmer for 10 years on the farm, and she loved that transition, and she kept herself busy. She is still busy and active on the farm, as well as Devin's mom. I mean, them four really have such a great relationship with each other, and they balance each other so well. They're first and foremost friends, and then essentially business partners after that.
When there's new farm videos being made, I think it might then be good to involve your mom in that video.
Exactly.
Because I think your dad was in the previous one on his own. Yeah. And if she was farming for 10 years, she needs to get some kudos.
I definitely agree.
Could send your dad a message. Yeah. Okay, so there's obviously a big dynamic in terms of responsibilities. You've got the final say within Zuney Burgers. Devin's got the final say within Zuney Wagyu, and then your dad's on the farms. They obviously control and manage that operation. But you mentioned something before we started recording, that there's so much value for you in that relationship with your business partner. How does that add to what you were able to create here and what you were able to create within Zuney Wagyu?
I think it's just having full faith in each other's ability, and somebody that you can lean on and have a soundboard. Like that, I really, if I had to think of all these things through in my own head, I would have definitely gone crazy by now, because there's such small decisions that you need to make constantly as a business owner. Like, essentially, being a business owner is just about solving problems, and having somebody else that gives you a different perspective on that problem really does help. And I often, seriously, I don't understand how people can build up a business on their own and kind of be that leader. For me, it's the nicest thing to be able to lean on to somebody and ask them for advice. Look, this is what's happening with me. What do you think? What do you think I should do? And essentially the fact that each partner has their own responsibility, and we can lean on each other and help each other and guide each other where need be, really adds to this whole environment. And it's just a proper soundboard. And I have so much respect for him, and I have such an admiration for how he runs that business, because when we were doing the handover from when I was handing my side of Zuney Wagyu over, and I was doing operations and logistics, and handed it over to him, we both said, like, I've got a certain way of doing things, you've got a certain way of doing things. I could tell you how I did it, but at the end of the day, you need to do it in your way, and you need to be yourself in this business, because at the end of the day, you are this business. So you need to be yourself within this business. Otherwise, if you're somebody fake and trying to be something else, it's only going to last a year or two, and then your real self is probably going to come through. So from this get-go, be honest, be yourself, and put your personality in that business, which I really think he has done, and I hope I've tried to do here also. It's just to put my personality within Zuney Burgers.
Yeah. I can hear like a deep trust between you two, which is absolutely, I think, a bedrock of any business. But just because there's trust in the partnership and trust in the brand and the business plan, that doesn't mean that starting a business and running a business isn't stressful. How did you manage the stress in the early days versus how are you managing the stress now?
Yes, to be honest, I would say there's maybe more stress now than there was then. Yeah, it's bigger numbers, bigger problems, I guess. We're at a very interesting phase. We always try and at a certain point in the year analyze the business. And what we've found is we often analyze it in winter because that's when it's a bit more quiet. But then in the same breath, you're like, okay, cool, these numbers are looking a lot tighter than what they would in December. So yeah, it's interesting is that business and restaurants, especially in Cape Town, because you're part of the tourism and hospitality industry, it fluctuates so much, and that cash flow up and down. So, managing stress, once again, having somebody to talk to, exercising, mental health is super important. I've got a fiance. She really tries to get me to talk about my feelings. I think that helps. I'm not necessarily somebody that always talks about my feelings and things like that. So over and above having a business partner, it's actually having that partner in life that you can also offload to. So I kind of share different stresses to Mika, and then I share different stresses to Devin. And it's nice that I've got both in my business and personal life, somebody that I can share where I am at and what's going on in my head.
Yeah, that's so vital to have a community of people that surround you and support you, that you can be yourself with and you can be vulnerable to. And yeah, it makes the difference.
And what's also nice is that Devin and I are in very similar places in our life. I got engaged June of last year to Mika. He got engaged March of this year to Chelsea, his now fiance. And so we're getting married 6 months apart from each other. And he also has Chelsea on the farm that can help him and talk to him and be there to help him. And that's like, I don't think you understand that how much that actually means to us. And at the start of this whole business, they would, like our wives and now fiancés, but at that time girlfriends, they would fly around the country with us and help us and sell burgers and kind of like take burgers to clients. And, it's like Mika helps us with our marketing. She doesn't really charge us for anything. And like, so it's really, we've worked so well to help each other out in different spheres and things like that. So.
Oh, amazing. So we're sitting in a burger joint.
Yes.
It would be remiss of us not to chat about the burgers. Can you take us through your product development journey around how your burgers started out and what they're currently in? Because, the idea of a burger is an ordinary concept, but you've turned this into something extraordinary, and I would love to learn a little bit more about that.
So we've actually, before Lamar, who's our current GM, he was our third chef. We had 2 chefs before then. Both taught us different perspectives of burgers, but the one guy just didn't have the BMT, if I can put it like that, and the second guy just got a bit too greedy too quickly and wanted too much, and he wanted equity very early on in the business, and we just said, we need to walk a road with you. This is a family business before anything like an equity conversation ever comes up. So, but both of those guys did teach us a lot and added perspective, but Lamar, he was the guy that really nailed and put everything together for us. Essentially, as I said at the start, we added lettuce to the burger and we don't anymore. And that was a lot of his thinking, is saying, listen, why do we actually put lettuce on this burger? It just adds time, it slows it down. But that whole concept was we were able to test it when we had that food trailer. And that really helped us to kind of enter the market. To build a food trailer at that time cost us about 80,000 Rand. And we got a massive return on that in the first 2 months even, and paid that off. But it was actually about experimenting. So we were running with this burger concept around the country. When we started finalizing this lease, we knew, okay, cool, we've got to do our homework. And because of Zuney Wagyu supplying a lot of private chefs and things like that, we actually just asked questions and went to them and contacted them and said, listen, Chef Ruben, for example, listen, please, can you help us? We would love to make a burger for you. Went to his house, flat top on, cooked a burger for him, got his feedback. We did that with about 20 chefs. Wow. Now, what was interesting is that of the 18 of the 20 chefs, they all said, burger shop, you don't really need to change much. But there were 2 guys, Chef Ollie and Chef Matt van der Berg. Those 2 guys were probably the most influential to help us. So we had, in our house sauce, we were very high in tomato sauce and low in mustard. But what both of them actually told us that time is that if you increase the mustard and decrease the tomato sauce, then mustard brings out the flavor of beef, where tomato sauce hides the flavor of beef. So you're going to kind of bring out flavor of beef more. And it was interesting for both of them to tell us similar stories like that. And we really used that information and guidance to help us. And I think it was 5 days before we opened, we changed our final house sauce recipe to be more mustard orientated, and that helped us give us that balance. So for us, it was just relying around people, but also just asking questions and asking for help. Like I really think people are often too scared to ask anybody for help and think that they're all alone in this. But if you just ask somebody, the worst thing that they can say is, no, I'm not going to help you, and then cool. Don't help me, I'll ask the next person. And you keep on asking until you get that help. But also just realize that I think with all the chefs saying, yes, it's good, they're also just like, cool, it's good. Maybe they would change things, but they don't necessarily share. It's just chefs need to always be open and honest with you, and people need to be open and honest. And with both Chef Ollie and Matt van der Berg, to this day, I've still got a long-standing relationship with. It's for us, it really is nice, the support system that we have around us, which helped us a lot.
It almost feels like that's the superpower of this business, having own internal support structures of close family and friends, and within yourself and Devin as business partners. But it also feels like there's this external community championing you and wanting to see you succeed. And it simply came from an ask to say, would you give us some feedback? We want to grow, we want to get better, we want to excel. Would you do it? And it's funny how the power of a question can very easily turn into a yes, we'd love to help.
Exactly. And somebody like Chef Ruben, I mean, I've got the utmost respect for him. We chat a lot. To be honest, when I was driving to his house, I didn't even know that he had his own burger shop in Franschhoek. And I was driving to his house, and I was like, somebody asked me, where are you going? And then I was like, Chef Ruben was like, why are you making burgers for him? He also sells burgers. And he was so open and honest and like so welcoming to us. And like, that just means so much to me to this day. Like, that a guy that sells burgers is so happy, and like, he's like, cool, he'll give you guidance. Because I think a lot of people in this industry are just now saying like, listen, I need to share my health, my wealth of information. It doesn't help. I just keep everything to myself. It's not going to grow this industry. No.
I think you mentioned at the start of the conversation that you had a product that solved a problem for the family, and that you were concerned that you would struggle to get people to come through the doors, so to get those clients in.
Yeah.
What were maybe in those early days some of the unconventional marketing tactics that you tried to get people to know, we're here, we've arrived, you need to come and try this out?
So I think the first thing was, if you look at any business, so let's say you're a tourist, when you go to a new town and you feel like burgers, what are you going to do? You're going to go onto Google, okay? So the first bit unconventional thing we did is the first 100 burgers, once we had opened, so when I spoke about Georg earlier, that was our soft opening, but the next day we had our proper launch. And we said the first 100 burgers are free as long as you eat the burger and give an honest Google review.
Wow.
Okay? So that gave us automatically from day one 100 Google reviews. So that set us up in the right platform. But in general, unconventional things that we did is obviously with Jack Black and Brooks, we gave people a free beer and Brooks. But we also, what we often do here to try and sell the farm to table concept is we would give you free biltong from the farm, like just as a kind of a table talker. We often slice steaks and then cook steaks, slice it up and then hand it out to people to kind of push that story a bit more. At the end of the day, that small bit of marketing, if I can put it like that, just adds to each business and adds to the people's experience. Yeah.
So we've spoken a little bit about the journey from developing your product, but it's one thing having something that you can sell that you're extremely proud of and that really is extraordinary, but it's another thing getting the product here. Yes. Can you tell me about your cold chain process? You spoke about the farm to table experience. It's literally on the shirt.
Yes, that's not.
But the farm is quite far away. How do you get the burgers into that restaurant at the back?
So at the start, we still send all of our meat with courier guy. We've come across a company called Fridge Freight. They transport it in cold chain for us from the farm all the way to a central depot here, and then they bring it across. So for us, like anything for meat, the cold chain is extremely important. We need to uphold that. We now have a production kitchen at Maker's Landing at the waterfront, where we've got a 9 square meter cold room where we can actually put all of the trim in and then distribute it to the stores and to the trailer and things like that. So the cold chain is extremely important to us. We've got the right companies to help us and guide us all the way through and to kind of deliver the products in a timely manner. So we get twice a week, we get a delivery from the farm. We also keep backup stock that's frozen in case we have massive spikes in demand. You never know what can happen in this industry. And that's the thing, is you're very dependent on people walking through that door.
So you just mentioned the industry. What is it that maybe keeps you awake at night in the business that you're operating in? Because fast food is that. It's fast. You need to be able to adapt and pivot. So what are the kind of things that keeps you on your toes to make sure this business doesn't just continue like moving forward, but that it keeps increasing and growing?
It's actually interesting. It's very easy. It's consistency. That is a lot more difficult than people would imagine. So if you look at how you make a burger, you're just cooking a patty. The rest is essentially assembling things. Okay. Now, that's one side. So I grill a little bit different to the next guy, and us to get that perfect standard. So there's certain mechanisms that we started putting in place to get exactly the same amount of salt on every burger. Because one guy would have a heavier hand than the other. Those things all add up to it. So consistency is probably the most important. I think at the start, open cards, being new to this industry, we didn't always get that right. It was up and down, especially with something like our fries. Now, our fries is a very interesting concept, if I can put it like that. So we use Wagyu tallow to cook it in, but we don't just buy McCain fries. We go and buy potatoes direct from the farmers. Okay. Now, within potatoes, we can have a whole podcast about potatoes, but there is also, I think there's like 12 or 9 or 10, let's call it 10 varieties of potatoes. Okay. Now, some are high in water and some are high in starch. So you want low water and higher starch. Sorry, the other way around. Now, What that means is that if you have one variety of potato called, let's call it mondial, that we use, okay? If it's raining when it's being picked, there will be more water in that potato than if it was dry. So it also depends on if it is a wetland potato or a dryland potato. So there's so many variables between varieties of potatoes, but then also within mondials, not all mondials are equal because maybe it rained at the one side on the one farm, and it's just to get that consistency, which is extremely important to us. So we actually have specific recipes we have about 5 common varieties of potatoes that we use. And we have specific recipes, different steaming times to actually make those potatoes. And because we're not using seed oils, we're using pure Wagyu tallow, it's not like I can go and call somebody and ask, how are you making these potatoes? Because nobody in South Africa is really doing that to make potatoes in tallow. So just the frying mechanism is different, essentially creating a different vessel. And if you think about it, the frying side and the material you use to fry is so important. It's actually the most important thing over and above the potato, because it's got different smoking points, it's got different viscosities. It really is very complicated. And I mean, then I've even spoken about the fat composition that goes into. You get hard fat, soft fat, organ fat. So we also need to get that balance right. So at the start, a lot of my development, or me and Devon's development, was just the burgers. And then also 2 weeks before, we were like, okay, we need to start getting these potatoes things in order and sorted. And so that was also just a bit of an experimenting phase. And we did get definitely a bit of bad reputation. Some say the fries are too oily and too things. Some people say it's old, but at the start. And that was the reality of it. But it was never old. We do fresh potatoes. It's just the water and that starch combination that you need to get. And on an individual level, for each batch of potatoes, you need to taste, check, and adjust your recipe.
This is way more science than it is art. And it's art too, because I've seen what your burgers look like and I've had some. And it is, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not using this lightly. It's extraordinary. And it's great to see that journey of testing and developing to get to a place of consistency. So beyond the financial side of this organization, of the business, what are some of the markers that you use to determine what was a successful day? What was a successful week, a successful month? What do you look at?
Okay, so in any business, you need a Northern Star. So what is your guiding star? What do you look at the end of the day? So alcohol, I'm not too fussed about that. It's a small percentage of revenue. My Northern Star in this business is how many burgers we sell. Every decision that we make within this business is this going to help sell more burgers or is it not? If the answer is no, then we don't do it. And it's also about keeping true to ourselves and keeping it simple. So often we've tried to now maybe bring, let's call it gin and tonics or whiskey here and things like that. And it's complicating the business. Like nobody's going to go to a burger shop and be like, I specifically want a whiskey. Do you understand what I mean? Like you're here for the burgers. Everything else is just about creating the environment for them. So we try and give our guests choices, but also we need to make sure that it's a quick service. I mean, if you need to now pour different whiskeys and a gin and tonic and whatnot, it takes time. Yeah. Whereas you open a bottle and you pour a glass of wine. So it adds to the experience without really taking too much away or not giving them too many options.
So the consistency and the Northern Star focus of, is this going to help us sell more burgers? Yeah. I think is a wonderful way to think about your daily decisions that you take. And that's led to not just some, but quite a bit of success within this space. Now, this is not the time to be humble. Please tell us about some of the successes you've had, because you've won more than one award. So I want you to list them from start to finish. What has Zuney Burgers achieved since opening a very short while ago?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's important to always try and stay humble, but we were very lucky about how everything played out. So our first award was the Lux Burger Joint of the Year in 2024. That also came as a bit of a surprise.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And then end of last year, we won a packaging award for our burger box at the packaging awards in South Africa. And then probably my biggest, and I would say my favorite award that we won is the best new restaurant in Western Cape on Uber Eats. Wow. We went on to Uber Eats July last year, and that really helped us put us on the map. Unfortunately, Uber Eats is a big part of a business like this. There's a direct correlation between when you make a burger and how long it takes to be eaten, how good it is, and Uber Eats takes that away. We really try and control the environment that we sell things in, and Uber takes that control away. Yeah. So it is a balance, and it's not always the nicest thing for us to sell on Uber Eats, but it is also very important, especially during months like this where it's winter and people don't want to come out. So we won Uber Eats award, and then we won, start of this year, we won the Lux People's Choice Award for Best Burger in Cape Town, or the Western Cape. So same award as Lux, but this was the People's Choice, so voted by the people. There was Inside Guide also did a thing about the way chefs eat, and most chefs also chose us as the best burger. Amazing. Which was great. So about 2 weeks ago, recently, we won the National Burger Challenge, which was held at the Africa Food Show, which is part of Gulf Foods, which is probably the biggest food show in the world. So we won that challenge. Lamar, our GM, he did everything there. He was really amazing. And so that went very well. But we actually always do this to kind of, not for the awards, but just that it does show you that you're kind of on the right track. But it's interesting. This burger industry is super competitive, but that keeps you on your toes. So over and above the awards that keeps you on your toes, I would say the biggest thing that keeps us on our toes is the competition. I really think competition is a good thing. I embrace the people. I'm across the road. I can see Smoking Joe's. We speak about once a week what's going on in your business, what's going on in my business. Really try and keep an open and honest conversation with each other. Although we sell the same product in different forms across the road from each other, we still work well together and chat and help each other out, lentil rolls and whatnot between each other.
Nothing like a good bit of rivalry to keep you at your best and to make sure that you can move forward. So Henning, thank you for sharing so much about how we got here. My question is, where are you going? There's a North Star and it seems like it's quite far away and you're running fast to get there. So what can we expect from Zuney? What's ahead?
So I can answer that question in another thing. So if you look at a company called Five Guys, okay, they're probably one of the worldwide, but between Five Guys and Shake Shack, I would say they are the best burgers internationally. Now, Five Guys went 10 years or something like that without opening up a second branch. What they just said is they need to get the base right and the consistency right. So for us, we're going through a phase where we do want to expand. How, when, what, where. We're waiting for the right opportunities. There is some in the pipeline, but we are very location specific and we won't just open up stores left and right. For us, we are always quality over quantity. So essentially, there is plans for that, but we also just need to get this base running smoothly, perfectly, and consistently. Then we can look at further expanding. But things like our trailer really does help us gain exposure. Sometimes I say it's a blessing and a curse that it's got wheels. It's good because you can travel around, but then also consumers want to go back there and then it's not there. Yes.
No. Okay, so from an expansion perspective, if you are looking around at what's next to Zuney and you're thinking about locations, it's not a one day, it's a if we find the right location. Yes. Would that be within a franchise model? Would that be expanding Zuney itself? How are you looking at doing locations if it's not down the road in Kloof Street?
So it's interesting. If you want to expand this business, there's three ways to do it. Owner manage. So Devin and I run with Lamar day to day. We've got control of everything, which is what we are looking for. The second option is full franchise. So somebody pays you X amount, you get the locations or they get the locations. Yeah, so that is one option, but you often do lose control. The midway between that is something called a JV, joint venture, and we would be looking at something like that. We currently have an application form which people have filled out to open up a joint venture or a franchise of Zuney around the country. We have about 40 applicants.
Wow.
So when we get the right locations, we are ready to fire. But once again, it's just about getting those bases ready and right and ensuring that all businesses are profitable before we look on expanding. Because, at the same breath, Devin on the meat room, he needs to expand that side before we can actually process more animals to supply more stores. So it's unfortunately not as easy as just opening up another store and then calling your butcher, your local butcher, and be like, yes, I now want to double my orders moving forward. We actually have to physically double the size of the farm, etc., and the processing facility. We've got enough cattle, but just the processing facility that we need to expand on. And so it's that give and take the whole time, which is good for the business, and it allows us to kind of grow organically, because we always say nibble off more than you can chew, don't bite off more than you can chew, but kind of grow, but just don't do too much, because if you grow too fast, you're going to drop the ball on quality. There's a lot of variables actually in an industry like this.
Yeah. So when you think about the expansion of Zuney, have you started thinking about succession? Who's going to replace you? Would it be just stepping back into management where people are more hands-on? Are you maybe thinking about getting this business to a place where you can sell it and walk away, seeing that the value that you create? What's sort of on your mind at the moment?
So, I don't think we would necessarily build this business to sell it. We don't want to lose control over the entity. I mean, if you look at everything that we do, we've got control of the entire value chain, and we would always want to control that to a large extent. We have had a lot of offers for equity, a lot of big companies wanting to buy us over. Maybe, but not really. That's not like, it's not really on our cards. For now, we just want to carry on doing our thing. But in the day-to-day of Zuney Burgers, I've got an amazing team with Jabulani and Lamar and Chef Sia and Chef Nolene, Chef Linda and Chef and Mishka, who all kind of have their roles and their niches. So I've stepped away from the day-to-day of Zuney Burgers, where I'm now focusing on how to get this base right and ensure that we carry on giving a quality product that's consistent. So I've also, as I said, same about Devin, him being himself. It's important for Chef Lamar and Jabulani to be themselves within this business. And I mean, Jabulani's got literally, I swear he's got a photographic memory. He would come, a guest would come in 2 weeks later, and he would go, "Hi, Andrew. You'd remember the guy by name, remember what he ordered last," and it's things like that. Like you walk into a burger shop, you're not expecting somebody to remember you by name and your order. Yeah. And those are things that, I mean, I've got the memory of a goldfish, so I forget my own name sometimes, and he's like, that adds to that whole experience. And we need to always enable people to allow them to do that and be themselves, and then the rest I feel will fall in place.
No, to operate in their strengths. You can operate in your strength. You allow Devin to operate in his strengths. You add value as partners to each other's businesses because there's a stake in one another's business. It's not
literally and figuratively.
Literally and figuratively. That was a happy accident. So, Henning, thank you so much for sharing everything that you did. Before I let you go and get back to making sure that this just accelerates, I've got some quick fire questions. So I don't want you to think about this. I want you to just shoot your answers. What was your first job?
My first job was sales manager at Freedom of Movement.
Okay. And they're right next door, right?
Yes, they're right.
Cool. Amazing. What's the first thing you do every single morning?
I drink coffee.
You drink a coffee, great. What's the last thing you do before you go to sleep?
I reflect on my day.
Right. Do you journal?
No, but mentally I do.
Okay. If it wasn't for Zuney, what would you be doing?
I would still be at Freedom of Movement.
Okay. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs looking to start their own business?
Make a business plan, think it through, allow other people to read your business plan, because that research for me is probably the most important thing. If you put pen to paper or type out things and you allow other people to read your idea, they're either going to tell you you're insane or you're not insane. What's interestingly though is that there's so many businesses where people said they're absolutely insane, it's never going to work, but it actually did work. So it's that balance of believing in yourself, but also kind of getting external confirmation. It's a balance between those two. But in general, whatever you do, put a business plan together and then also just believe that you can do it. And then once you do it, commit. Everything, every day, you just need to think about how are you going to make this work. And it's going to take time. Businesses take time. We're not even close to being a success. It's still a long path before we get to where we want to. If you look at a company like Freedom of Movement, I had a chat to Roel the other day, and he said, and I actually really believe it, it actually takes 10 years for a brand to be established. And that is kind of where they're at now. They're in the 11th or 12th year now. So it takes time. So just realize it's not all going to be perfect from the start. There's a lot of challenges, but that's the whole thing about being a business owner, is how you overcome those challenges and work around them and kind of figure out solutions. That's kind of the big thing. Any CEO, I also heard a podcast the other day, the CEO actually just has the worst of the worst decisions to make, because it's essentially the problems that nobody else could solve, and now it's being thrown on your desk. And a lot of it is just problem solving, and so that's...
Which entrepreneurs do you admire and why?
Entrepreneurs that I admire. Obviously, Elon Musk is quite a big one. Steve Jobs is a big one. Phil Knight, Shoe Dog, what an amazing book. I actually listened to a podcast called Founders. And from there, I've heard the most amazing entrepreneurial stories. I mean, Michael Dell, people like that. It's just stories that you never heard, but during that process and reading those books, like, you can actually just hear the struggles that they went through and realize that every business owner kind of goes through that. Because sometimes you're like, am I going insane here? How is there so many problems going on here? And it's just constant. But that is business. And the whole thing, once again, is just how you solve those problems.
Who do you call when you don't know what to do?
Devin. Very easy.
Always the first call.
Devin is the first person. If I don't know anything and I don't know how to do it, and don't know how to approach the situation, Devin. He's my business partner, full faith in him. Yeah.
Do you have any books or music recommendations or things that you're currently obsessed with?
Founders, that podcast, that's for me the big thing. It's just once again nice to hear other people's stories and hear perspective on similar problems.
Thank you so much for allowing us into your space, physically in your space, and we just wish you so much good luck on this adventure.
Thanks to you guys, and thanks to everybody at the Wealth Lab. You guys are amazing, and I really think you're onto something here. And thank you for putting me on this podcast. I'm not really sure why I'm here, but it's really a pleasure. And thank you.
Back.
Thank you.